What's up, barbecue nerds? We are back with we're back with another midweek banger podcast. And I'm excited. We're talking about ribs today, as you probably saw in the title. And so we got some blocks of instruction to move through. But before we do that, I just want to let you guys know, if you're new here, like if you just saw this and you were like, I'll give this video a shot, welcome. Thank you for giving me your time. I appreciate it. I will not abuse it. Second, we ask nothing of new people. So if you're new here, meet and greet, first time you saw it, or second or third time you saw it, but today you decided to click into a video, again, all I say is welcome. We ask nothing of you other than have maximum enjoyment. And if it's not your first time here, you already know what the deal is, family. Welcome back. We got two housekeeping items, and then we got to quickly move into the topic of ribs, barbecue ribs. We're going to talk about it. And I'll note on the topic of ribs, I've been doing some deconstruction is not the right word, but I would say I've been doing some self-analysis, some reanalysis, just in my approach to ribs. So I kind of want to talk about how I used to do them versus how I do them now, and where my verdict is on the processes that I like. I'll talk about a special way of cooking ribs that I saw at a specific Texas restaurant that I'm not going to name, but it was a very particular way of doing them. So anyways, we got some stuff to move through, but I just want to note we got two housekeeping items. First, what's the first? What do I want to hit first? The first housekeeping item, I'll do this one first. I ask nothing of you, as I said, but there is a fee to this show. There is a fee, and the fee is interaction. I can't put into words how important it is for you guys on the other end of this camera to interact, because it's the only way that I can judge if it's worth your time and worth my time to do this. I'm not saying this like a martyr. It is an objective fact. When I do this podcast, I have to step away from the main business of meet and greet to do this. And it's not making a ton of money, which is fine, because I'm not after the money. I'm just after the interaction. I'm after the supporting the cause and hanging out with the barbecue fam. But the reality is I'm a very small business. So for me to step away, I just got to know that there are people on the other end of this thing that enjoy it. So all I ask is interact, whether that's a like or a comment. And I'll tip my hat to you guys. You guys blew me away on the last podcast. Your interaction was it was off the charts. So thank you. Second order of business, and then we're moving into the topic. Guys, look, you know I very rarely, if ever, ask you for anything. I'm talking to the folks who are not new here. Like, you've been subscribed, you know the deal, you consider yourself family. You guys know that I very rarely ask for anything. I'm going to reach into my bag of deposits and ask for one favor, if I may. There's a brother in barbecue that runs a small but growing channel called Harry the Horse Barbecue. I consider this guy a brother. He's a bro. I've not met him in person yet, but that time is coming. He's a hardworking dude. He has a career, and he does YouTube barbecue videos on the side out of the passion of his heart. If you're subscribed to me, I would love to see Harry pick up, I want to say 100, but I'm going to shoot for the moon kind of guy. I'd love to see Harry pick up 1,000 subs. Can we do that? If you guys are subscribed to me, can you just take my own personal vote of confidence, the trust that you have in me, take it and just apply it to Harry? He's working hard. I'd love to see the algorithm. I'd love to see the algorithm do what it needs to do for someone who's putting in the freaking work. Your thumb has a ton of power, and you pause, you freaking weirdos. Your thumb has a ton of power, meaning this is a phone. This is your thumb. You can hit a subscribe button, and I can't put into words like how much subscriptions mean to guys like me who don't have 100,000, 500,000 subscribers. And I know it means the same to Harry. So anyways, I'm going to leave a link to his channel below. You can watch this and just click into it. YouTube will take you to his channel. Hit subscribe. My brother is just pumping out true backyard content, guys. All right. Let's talk about some stuff. Guys, you know, on this podcast, I don't convince you to stay here. I don't. I can't continue to keep up with the modern day attention span of humans. It's a losing battle. I'm trying to do it on my short form videos, And so like my point is, like, if you're watching this and you're like, bro, just getting to the topic, that's my point. You are proving my point in real time. I'm 5 minutes in. I remember a day when 5 minutes felt like 30 seconds. I remember a day. Like, you remember when you used to go get your car worked on and you had to sit in the lobby with no phone and you just looked at the random automotive papers around and you just sat there and stared off with your thoughts for an hour. Remember those days? I'm from that era, so I can't keep up with humans, but I digress. Let's move into the topic. I have notes. As you guys know, I very rarely do the notes, but I did do notes for this one because what I want to do is pull the scalpel out and do less. I want to do less open loop trains of thoughts, which are good. They have their time and place. And I want to do more bulleted topics on ribs, mostly because when it comes to barbecue and brisket in particular, I can, let me put it this way. Brisket is such a robust topic. There's so many different factors and variables that go into it. It's very easy to just flow out different thoughts because it's such a robust cook. Ribs are different. Ribs are pretty structured. And so I guess what I'm saying is I have topics here, and as I move through them, what I want you guys to do on the other end is just think about this, approach this particular podcast from the stance of, you know how you do ribs now, and you know how you've consumed YouTube barbecue content that's taught you how to do ribs. And I just want you to continue to juxtapose those two camps. And I'm not going to say one's right or wrong necessarily, but what I want you to do for the purpose of this podcast is just to think about ribs going back in hindsight, because that's going to apply to this topic, because there's been some fallacies that have been taught in the name of ribs over the years that I would like to debunk a little bit. Maybe debunk's a little too dramatic. Maybe it's a little too tinfoil hat. Let me think of a better word. I would like to rewire and rephrase the way that we talk about ribs. And the first order of business on my notes list is that I have, why are ribs deceptive? So let's walk into the wood line of this topic. Why are ribs deceptive? Over the years, I have come to a couple core conclusions when it comes to ribs. And the first conclusion on our journey of rewiring how we speak about ribs is this notion, and I am guilty of this. So I raise my hand. I, Marcus Frisbee, am guilty of doing the following. I want to rewire the notion that ribs are the easiest, most fail-proof cut in barbecue. I, in particular, have been guilty of saying that. I have said that. I have two rib videos. I just did a new rib video on my newer method, and then I have an OG video. And on that OG video, if I recall, I said they're the most fail-proof cut in barbecue, one of the, and that's partially true. And what I mean by that is ribs are fail-proof in the sense that it's a pork product. And pork products pork as a whole, by nature of that specific animal, it's very forgiving. Why so? Because it's riddled with fat. It's just riddled with fat, first off. Second off, and this is me trying not to go too far into Nerdville, but if you look at the function of the animal, some of my farmers out there, maybe you can chime in. What is the function of a pig? What's the function of it? If you look at the function of a pig, they're not, at least the farms that I've been on and the farms that my family has owned in the South, I didn't see pigs hauling heavy farm equipment. I didn't see it. I did not see pigs grazing hundreds of acres of Greenland. I didn't see it. So on and so forth. So my point is, by nature, a pig, it's a less worked animal. Unlike a cow, steer. My goodness. Massive, lean, muscular, grazing animal by nature. Pigs, a little bit more relaxed. And because of that, their meat is just a little bit more tender. It's a little bit less worked. And on top of that, they eat a bunch of crap, so they're full of fat. Well, when that animal gets harvested and processed and then ends up on your smoker, you're bringing all that nature with you. Nature meaning the function of the pig. And why am I telling you this? This is important to note, guys, because if you forget all that and then you hear pork ribs are the most forgiving meat in barbecue, while forgetting everything I just said, you're going to think, oh, I can't really mess this up. No, you can mess this up. you can because of how forgiving the product is. You overshoot it. And there's a line between relaxing and cracking a beer and cooking some ribs and throwing them on and being a little lackadaisical. There's a line between that and then a line between, oh, I can't mess these up because they're fail-proof. And so what I want to do in the first step is just give you the notion that, no, you can mess these up. It's possible to mess these up. So just do away with the fact that they're totally fail-proof if you've bought into that. And if I have caused you to buy into that, I apologize. Now, what I have meant to say, and so this is the reframing right now, is what I have meant to say is with the right process, ribs are fail-proof. That's the truth. That's the more accurate statement. Ribs can be the most fail-proof cut in barbecue with the correct process. So let's step into some processes. So we're in the forest. Let's do it. I mean, we've been doing it, but let's really do it. Let's do it. All right. So I touched on everyone thinks ribs are easy and why people judge ribs by the wrong metric. So I think over the years, we have lost what it means. I don't know if we've lost it. I don't even know if we've ever really properly identified. What does it mean to cook a good slab of ribs? What is the metric? What are we measuring by? What is a good slab of ribs? Let's touch on that so that we can pack into the greater topic. I measure ribs by the following. And it's not rocket science. It's just kind of how I measure my own ribs to make sure that I am staying consistent. So first, on a good slab of ribs, I need to have a definitive line between tender and mushy. So that's going to be one of my first core tenets, is that I need to be able to identify and clearly define or be able to clearly define the difference between mushy and tender because it's a fine line. And I have personally cooked slabs of ribs and served them and ate them myself. And I've been like, man, these are really tender. You know what? They're so tender, they're mushy. Well, because I overdid it. So that's first. There's got to be a fine line between you serve me mushy ribs and you serve me tender ribs. Now we'll talk about all this as we pack into the podcast, but we got to identify what are our measurables? What are the metrics? What are the KPIs that we're using to show a rib's success? Next after that is going to be, and I don't have a really a bullet for this. I don't have a term, mostly because 99% of this podcast is just coming straight out of my head into the camera. But the second measurable for me would be, however you want to term this or coin it, wherever I sink my teeth into this specific bone of ribs, that is where the meat needs to come off. That's a measurable for me. Now, I don't go as far as to make it competition, like it's a Mosaic law, because, it's not that big of a deal. But if I'm trying to maintain consistency, that is a measurable of mine. That where I put my teeth, where I sunk my teeth into this rib, when I pull it, the whole freaking thing's not coming off with me. I think I don't think I know, there is a thing these days about fall off the bone barbecue, which probably should be its own podcast. And if you're in the camp of hearing me ask you to interact with the video and you're thinking I never interact with videos, I don't even know what I would say, maybe that's a starting point. Drop in the comments and let me know, have you seen this whole fall off the bone thing? What are your thoughts on it? Should I do a podcast on it, or is it not that big of a deal? I don't really care one way or the other, to be honest with you. How people want to cook their barbecue, if it makes them proud, heck yeah, right on, works for me. I'm just saying, for me, I don't necessarily want my ribs to totally fall off the bone. So that's the metric. When I bite this thing, is all of this meat coming off with me? Is it mushy? Or did I get what I bit? Ooh, that's good. Maybe that's the term. Did I get what I bit? And can I definitively separate mushy from tender? Next is going to be moisture. So we talked about pork products, and the reason why I took the time to set the foundation on what is a pig, because that feeds into moisture. Guys, ribs are different than brisket in the sense that if you go buy a really low quality brisket, you will, for the most part, you'll get what you pay for. Ribs, not so much. I have bought really cheap, really crappy ribs from not reputable grocery stores and made really darn good ribs. And that's because they're riddled with fat. They just are. Ribs are riddled with fat. And so it's a lower barrier to entry to get a end product that you're proud of, because they just come so fatty. So when it comes to the topic of moisture, we have to know that ribs are inherently moist. Therefore, if you cooked a slab of ribs and they came out dry, specifically spares, baby backs are a totally different story, and I probably should have said that. I'm mostly talking about spares. I could lump baby backs into this, but baby backs are a different beast in and of themselves. I'm from the Midwest. We do a lot of baby backs out here. Luckily for me, I grew up in Missouri, which is where you get the St. Louis cut rib, which is the global term in all of barbecue, and you get KC style barbecue, specifically the KC burn-in. Brisket, I mean, we don't have to have the argument or conversation about where did brisket really come from, but I will say KC is no stranger to brisket. It's just a different kind of brisket. And they're no stranger to ribs. It's a different kind of rib. But I'm saying that because we do spares in Missouri. We do baby backs as well. For the topic of this discussion, I'm mainly talking about Texas style spares. Okay. So ribs are inherently a moist protein. So if you got ribs that came off and they're not moist, you have most likely dried them out. Unlike brisket, sometimes it doesn't matter what you do with the brisket. You got luck of the draw. You picked a bad. All right, you didn't pick. Let me put it this way: you were served. The option that was presented to you was an unfortunate option. It was just inherently dry. It didn't matter what you did with that brisket. It just didn't have the intermuscular fat. It was just a bad product from the start. Ribs are not so much like that. So one of the ways that I measure, I think this is the third way, is my moisture, my intermuscular post-cook moisture. How much is there? How much is not there? And of course, I have to feed into that. Where did I get my ribs from? If I got my ribs from Walmart and they're pumped full of antibiotics and they're pumped full of salt solutions and they're pumped full of GMOs and I don't know what other acronyms exist, that there is something to be considered there. A lot of ribs that you get from a grocery store like that, unless they're a Prairie Fresh product, which we don't have a lot of that in the Midwest. Unless they're of upper quality product, they're gonna have a brine solution pumped into them for preservation purposes. Well, brine is salt. And if you take a brine too far, it has diminishing returns. And that's a whole other topic. I guess what my point is read the package, like understand what you're getting. What you're getting is going to change the way that you cook them. Because if I get a rack of Sam's Club ribs, which I love, I think Sam's Club to me is some of the best ribs out there in consistency, in quantity. They take the chime off and then they leave the rest. It's a full spare rib, less the chime. And so you get just a massive slab of ribs, no brines, no antibiotics, no none of that crap for the most part. It's a pretty fresh product. And if you hand me the two, I'm going to have to account for, does this come with salt already or does it not? You will find, well, I'll talk about that later. I'll talk about it later because it's important on its own. So intermuscular moisture, is it there? Is it not there? Was it your fault or was it not your fault? This is important. And then the last core measurable for me is holistic texture. Texture is important with ribs. Texture is important with all barbecue. And I could go down the rabbit hole of how I approach platters. I'll say this humbly. I'm not great at assembling platters, mostly because I'm not in the restaurant space. I'm not daily serving barbecue. I am a guy who started really young in his backyard with super crappy materials, got really good with the super crappy materials, serving friends and family, and then started to upgrade my smoking apparatuses and started to upgrade the tools at my disposal over the years and started serving in mass quantities, more in what most would consider like a pop-up style application. So in saying that, I don't assemble platters all the time. So that for me personally, like if you guys are wondering what does Marcus want to get, where is his area of opportunity for growth in barbecue? Mine is platter assembly, that kind of stuff. In saying that, texture is important because when I assemble a platter, I am looking at the platter holistically, both in color and flavor and texture. And I've had some platters where I felt like because this person or this restaurant is serving at mass quantities, to their credit, some of the smaller details just got left off. And a really small detail that's important to me is the texture, meaning brisket textures should complement rib textures, should complement pork belly textures, should complement sausage texture. They should complement each other to the best of our ability. What does that look like doing it wrong? It looks like just overcooking everything. Everything's too tender. Everything is fall apart. Everything is mushy. That at the smallest levels, to guys like me, or well, it doesn't even matter to guys like me because we're all the same kind of person. When I say guys like me, I mean guys that care about this kind of stuff. To guys and girls like us who care about this kind of stuff, this is kind of the stuff that we look at, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's too granular. But I can tell you this, to the patron, they subconsciously recognize these things. They do. It's natural. It's natural. Texture is natural. So one of the measurables for me is texture. And one of the things I'll hit on later in this video that I am currently struggling with is I am cooking these days a rib where the top is just a little bit too firm for me. And it didn't used to be that way, but that's because I changed my process. And so I in real time am having to tweak a lot of things to dial in my texture because I overshot my texture. And that's normal. When you change a process, you'll overshoot a lot of things. And then the key in changing a process is to slowly dial it back. You went too far, you shot too far. And so you have to walk it back a little bit to get it closer to what you want. And so for me, I've been overshooting my texture. Texture is important because to get that what did I say? Bit where you get, to get that, your bark, and I say bark loosely because it's a different kind of bark. In essence, it's a little different than brisket. It's all bark. There's all Maillard. There's all that stuff. But I'm saying the bark, for lack of a better term, on the ribs need to be a certain way to get that bite. If you overdo it, what will happen is you'll bite into the rib, but because your bark or that top layer of your rib was a little too hard, you'll bite and take all of it off. So, texture. So let's move on. Let me take a sip and let me move on. I think I laid some pretty good groundwork. this is a hot topic, membrane on, membrane off. So membrane on, membrane off. I could spend a lot of time talking about this. I won't. I'll keep it concise, but I'll make it potent because I don't know where. I know when, I don't know where, and I don't necessarily know who, but I also don't know if it matters who. But I don't know where, when, and who really made it law to remove the membrane. I kind of remember when that happened, but I asked that question, and if you know, maybe you remember, like, when did that happen? I just remember somewhere along the line, we all just got taught, you got to remove that membrane. You have to. And so I did. Every rib I cooked, I did. There was a time where I remember I tested it a couple times leaving it on, and it was a disaster. And so I was like, oh yeah, okay, though the YouTube guys are right. I gotta take this off. But over the years, as I've learned and adapted and become more experienced in barbecue, I think I've realized how that became such a core principle of rib cooking. So I'll share it with you. I think that back in the day, before you had the introduction of male scale backyard smokers or Franklin backyard smokers or Mobergs or really much higher quality convective backyard smokers, before you had those like we do now, a lot of us were cooking on poorly constructed backyard smokers, especially a lot of just the common YouTube guys. And so I think what was happening is somewhere along the line, folks realized you could not cook down the membrane properly. The reason why, though, is because the smoking apparatuses lacked efficiency. Efficiency equals convection. The more efficient you are, the more convective your smoker is. So these units were lacking efficiency, i.e. convection. Therefore, the membrane wasn't able to cook in the way that a membrane needs to cook. Spoiler alert, I don't take my membrane off at all anymore because I don't need to, because I've learned what I'm about to tell you. Going back in time, though, we were all using crappy smokers, to be honest. And some of us are still today. And if that's you, congratulations. It is a honor and a pleasure for you to cook on a poorly constructed smoking apparatus, because you'll be better off for it when you upgrade. And don't rush the upgrade. Let it happen when it happens. So because a lot of us were cooking on crappy smokers, and a lot of the YouTube guys also had less convective smokers, we all kind of just started to no fault of our own, we all just started to collectively agree that, yeah, membranes are a net negative to a rib cook. However, I spent time at a barbecue restaurant, and I'm going to be careful with what I say, not because what I'm going to say is necessarily revolutionary or top secret. It's just that because of the nature of what I do, I spend time with restaurant guys, learning from them. Maybe it's content I do with them, whatever. And I'm really thankful that those guys let me spend time with them. But in doing that, I get to see a lot of their processes. And so I feel like I have an onus with a YouTube channel and a public platform. I have an onus to not air out processes that I've not been given permission to air out. So my point is, I'm just going to try to be careful out of respect for this specific location. Now, this barbecue restaurant is very well known. They've been around for a while, and they have some of the best ribs I've ever eaten. And I'll tell you this, and this is what was interesting to me. When I was there, I saw the pitmaster or the pitmasters. They were loading ribs, and they were loading ribs upside down. And I remember seeing that and thinking for a while, I was like, why in the world? Excuse me. I was like, why in the world are they loading ribs upside down? But I didn't want to be in the way, and I just hung out as a fly on the wall until the right time to ask the burning question, which was, why in the world did you load your ribs upside down? And then the pitmaster proceeded to dump pure wisdom, pure knowledge. And I'm super thankful. And I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but here's what I was told. He said they do this for a few reasons. And what I'm about to explain shifted the way that I think about ribs a lot. So they don't remove their membrane. And firstly, I was told that they load their ribs meat side down, membrane side up first, because they want to take advantage of the initial smoke and convection coming out of the smoker. They run their fires a little differently, which I'm not going to go into, but I'm just going to say the fires that are ran are a little bit hotter at the start than some other people that we see more recently. So there's a little bit more convection happening. They also tend to run their stacks wide open for the most part. So the way they cook, there's a lot of convection happening mostly from the jump. So they load their ribs upside down because they want the membrane to benefit from what's happening at the start of the cook. I'll tell you this, when I ate their ribs, something that they accomplished that I just have to tip my hat to is they cook their ribs to turn the membrane into an additive to the rib experience. Meaning, I don't know, I mean, I know how now, but I remember eating the rib and thinking, I don't know how the literal membrane actually complements the overall texture. I'm not going to say it was like a fried crispy texture, but it was also crispy. And you ate it, you got this interesting mix of tender, soft, perfectly cooked rib meat with a little bit of, not crunch, just a little bit of it's like it's like putting pork rinds in pulled pork. That's a great way of explaining it. Maybe not that extreme, but if you've ever put pork rinds, I think it's pork rinds. I say pork rinds. I think it's pork rinds. If you put pork rinds and you crunch it up and sprinkle it on top of pulled pork, that combination, that's kind of what it was like. It was really interesting. And so I'm trying to tell you guys that this is a spot who literally made something that the backyard community said you have to take off. They made it a net positive to the overall rib experience, starting off with their ribs membrane side up. So that's first. Second reason they explain why they do that is that they're chasing a particular color in their ribs, both in smoke color, meaning what the smoke does to the color of the protein, and then also sauce color. They have a particular sauce color. And when you put the two together on a block with a line full of patrons, they're after that experience. What the color of the ribs and the whole process, they're after that. It was explained to me that they start them upside down for a preservation of bark color. Meat side down is on the diamond grate. So not 100% of the rib is exposed. The rib meat is exposed. And that allows them to preserve a little bit of that color so that they're not taking their ribs too dark further into the cook. So that was interesting. Now they do flip their ribs. I'm not going to tell you when and at what temperature and all that, but at some point the ribs do get flipped. And then I'll say this. At another point in the process, the ribs get flipped back over and the smoker temps go up. So play with that as you may. That's how they achieve their ribs. And I left that my time there really thinking about that a lot for a lot of reasons. And so how I would apply that to this discussion is it made me pose one question. And I'm going to round out membrane, leaving you guys with the question. Feel free. I'm genuinely curious what you think. So drop in the comments, let me know. But if you think that's too, cliche, then shoot me a DM. I'm genuinely curious on what you would think on this. I'm going to pose you a question. and then you let me know your thoughts. So I'm not going to draw a conclusion. I'm going to pose a question. When the ribs were flipped upside down the second time, I saw the membrane was almost bubbling in spots. I assumed that bubbling was intermuscular fat getting hot and wanting to exit the membrane, wanting to exit the rib, but it couldn't because that membrane is so sinewy, it traps whatever that is, which I'm pretty sure is bubbling fat. It traps it in. My question to you is this: where does that fat go? If the membrane's on and the rib is meat side down, where does that fat go? Now, is there a like I am genuinely asking. I don't know if this is tinfoil hat Marcus, barbecue conspiracy Marcus. I don't have the science behind this. Maybe one of you guys are some kind of barbecue scientist that can tag in and tell me. But I think that the fat that is trying to leave at some point just gets redistributed back somehow into the meat, around the meat. It gets redistributed. Or at minimum, it stays where it's at. It just never leaves. And so I think, with all this said, leaving the membrane on traps way more moisture inside of the rib than if you took it off, because the opposite of what I just explained would be all that fat that was bubbling, that was trying to leave, is now draining off the rib. You're losing it. And so I don't know. I don't know if, I guess my point is, did we have it all wrong this whole time? That removing the membrane was actually doing more damage than we thought. We were never flipping our ribs over and giving them time to hit that convection. Offset smokers are topside cookers for the most part. Obviously, there's a lot of friction that flows through the entire cook chamber, but the way that the smoke in the heat enters and goes over the top of the grate, it's predominantly over the top of the grate, i.e. over the top of your meat. So the top of your protein, whatever the protein is. In this case, starting membrane side up would allow that heat to transfer over the top, right? Or flipping it at any point would allow that. So that's my question to you is, did we have it all wrong maybe? Maybe it was less about remove the membrane and more about flip your membrane over. I didn't see, guys, 10 years ago, I didn't see anyone. I'd be hard pressed to think someone was consuming more barbecue content just because I was so obsessing over it. There's probably people that were consuming more for sure. But it was few of us. And so I'm just saying, I didn't see a video of someone saying, flip your membrane. I didn't see that till more recently. So membrane on, membrane off. I like to leave the membrane on. That's where I'm at. Now, my next bullet is temperature myths. Temperature myths. The other thing that I think we were, how do I approach this without getting too far into the minutia? For many years, 225, 250 was the common number for barbecue. I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong. What I would say is every temperature is different for every smoking apparatus. 250 on my 500 gallon is different than my 1,000 gallon is different than my backyard. However, I would say 225 on any of my smokers is too low of a temperature to cook at for the entire duration of a cook, regardless of temperature. And that is no more applicable to any protein than ribs. I've learned over the years that ribs appreciate a little bit higher of a temperature. They appreciate a little bit more convection and a little bit higher of a temperature, more so than brisket, partially due to the fact that ribs are at most half the cook of a brisket. So you have more time to ease a brisket into the cook. Ribs, at most, you got about 6 to 7 hours to do your damage, and then they're out of there. And so you gotta be, every hour matters. Each hour that you're running too low is an hour that you really can't make up for, unlike brisket. So I have found that 225 for me, it produces a more hammy textured rib. Hammy is the best word that I could explain it. Too much salt also does that. which is why when you put the two together, an over salted rib cooked at a too low of a temperature, you get a less than desirable product. You get the combination of rib that I was talking about earlier, where it's too hammy, the bark is too tough. It's just a weird thing. Especially if you're buying a big box grocery store rib product that's pumped full, sitting in a brine. Then you go on your less efficient offset smoker, and then you start cooking at 225. That is a recipe for disaster. It just is. Because now you're mixing low temperatures with a bunch of salt. And not to mention, you put seasonings on it. So when it comes to temperature, I have found if I had to give a perfect number, it's 275. And I would say, I've said this in other videos, I think 275 is the golden temperature for any cut of barbecue. It's hot enough to render fat in the type of rendering that we want. It's hot enough to form bark. It's hot enough to allow your cold bed and splits to have proper combustion for the duration of the cook. So you're cooking at a more efficient temperature. You're less likely to fight your fire so much like you would on a lower temperature fire. And then the smoke output and the airflow that's happening at 275 degrees is just more efficient. It's just more convective. It's a good number. For me with ribs, I like to cook closer to 275, maybe 300 later in the cook. That's just me. I have found that anything lower than that, it is doing the opposite of what I want. So the temperature myth of 225, I think it's that. I think it's just a myth. It's antiquated, and that's okay. And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you can never cook at 225 because I cook in the 180s at times. Just depends on what's your cut of barbecue. What are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? My point right now is I don't cook anything at just 225 for the entire life cycle of the cook. That's the point I'm trying to make. Let me move on. So bullet number 4 is time versus doneness. And I have some sub bullets within that, but I'll just read them for you. So I have why 321 became a crutch. The 321 rib, I don't know if we remember that. I'm less interested in talking about 321 as a whole, but more interested in just connecting that specific process with the time fallacy. So we'll touch on that. Why cook time is a result, not a target. Why cook time is a result, not a target. And then what ribs tell you visually and by feel. So my nose is running and I have no tissue, and I'm so deep into this podcast that to try to find this 1 30-second part where I go get a tissue, it's too much work. So I'm just going to wipe my nose. You saw it. Wipe my nose on my shirt. It is what it is. All right. Let's see. I got about 15 more minutes on this, so we can kind of breeze through these. I'm almost done, guys. Thanks for hanging with me. If you guys like this, let me know. Let me know if you want another one. You guys know what to do. Time versus doneness. Why 321 ribs became a crutch. So in all the years that I've done barbecue, I've never had a successful 321 cook. I've done that maybe 3 times. Maybe 4 times at the max have I attempted that. And I'm not saying this because I'm some genius or anything. I'm just not the kind of guy, my personality, I'm like this with all things. I'm not the kind of guy to continue to do something that's not working for me on the basis of it's working for other people. And that's helped me in some situations of life, and that's certainly hurt me. I'm the kind of guy that's like, everyone's saying 321 ribs are crushing it. I am totally not crushing it. I'm not going to waste my time on it. Let me go figure out something else. And that's what I did. But the 321 ribs is inherently flawed because you should not be cooking barbecue just based on time. And if you ever find yourself cooking barbecue solely based on time, you're not getting the most out of your barbecue experience. You should be cooking barbecue based on temperature, look, and feel, and then using time as an indicator of how long you're going to be at that smoker. That's all time is. Time is an indicator of how much work you're about to put into this thing. Then put time to the side. That is it. Time does not dictate brisket cooks for me. The brisket dictates the cook. Same for the ribs, same for anything. Now, where time can become relevant is, well, it's literally just what I said. It's a meter for how long am I going to be doing this thing? Because barbecue, you have to time it. You're serving it, maybe you're resting it, you're holding it, you're cooking it, time is involved. But my point is, time should never dictate how you approach the process of your cook. Time should only inform you on how long you're going to be doing that cook. Now, with that said, 3-2-1 in any process that's rooted in the time itself is inherently flawed. Now, I believe 3-2-1 had some method of like this time at this temperature, this time at that temperature, then this time at that temperature with the foil and all that stuff. But even then, and that is a better approach, meaning now you're introducing temperature into your time. But even then, you can't explicitly function off of just time. Because if you put look and feel and internal temperature to the side, you're losing so much information. There have been rib cooks where I've been 3 hours in at 275, cooking 30 slabs of ribs, and for some reason, 3 of the ribs just are way more done than the others, and they come off early. Now, I know my smokers, and I understand that there's hot spots in my smokers, and there's other stuff going on. But if I was just solely going off, I have to cook all these ribs for 6 hours, not all of my ribs are going to be consistent. And so there's a crutch with anything that requires just time. And then also, why cook time is a result, not a target. I just touched on it. In any cook, the deliverable is the time. It's not the target. When I cook brisket, I estimate about 45 minutes per trim pound. About. Maybe an hour if it's a bigger brisket. But that's it. And the time is the result of the cook. It's a result. Did I push the brisket faster in the stall? I mean, there's so many different variables, but what I'm saying is 45 minutes about per trim pound. And if it takes 12 hours, it took 12 hours, and that's the result of the cook. Now, let me move off of this because it's a point I don't need to belabor. It's just time versus doneness, and time doesn't always equal doneness, but they have synergies. So let me round out with this one because I actually like this one. Ribs reward restraint. And it took me a long time to realize that. There is a how do I say this? There's a gentleman in barbecue that I respect a lot. And I owe a lot to him. His name is Malcolm Reed, because he was one of the first guys early on that I felt like wasn't pulling stuff out of his rear end just showing up on videos. And I'm not saying everyone was doing that. I'm just saying, to me, he was one of the only guys way long ago, early on, that was just speaking purely out of experience. Now, his experience was in the field in competition for the most part. I mean, he would say that. But I'm just saying, early on, I learned a lot from Malcolm. And Malcolm did us all a minor disservice by giving us one of the most delicious rib recipes ever because it was modeled off a competition. The only issue is that they were hyper palatable. And what I learned over the years is that I actually inadvertently trained my family and friends to believe that that is the way to eat a rib. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's the foil with the copious amounts of brown sugar, butter or margarine or parquet, honey. Some people put molasses, barbecue sauce like in the foil, cook it in that. Guys, it's delicious. You can only eat 1 or 2 of them. It's so much. And what I realized, like I said, over the years is that style of rib, he would even say it's a competition style rib. It's built for the one bite. On a platter, it's just too much. Not that it's wrong, it's just a little bit too much. For me, over the years, the best ribs that I have made, I've pulled back on a lot of stuff. I pulled back on stuff because the ribs, they reward your restraint. And I know we desire to put all kinds of stuff sometimes, rubs, sauces, play with the dampers, do all that stuff. But if you're trying to get really good at ribs, at least on the onset, dial it back a little bit. Pick your core rub, your core sauce, your core process, run that play a few times. The ribs will reward you. And over time, if you want to add more stuff in, do that for sure. But I think there's a reason why these days, most of the restaurants in Texas, they're cooking ribs, saucing them near the end, and sticking them in foil. For me these days, I do a no wrap rib and I sauce it at the end. I do a no wrap rib and I sauce it at the end. The main reason I do that, the main reason is if you watch my 2 rib videos, my 1 rib video was, I literally said in the video, I was paying homage to Malcolm and that his style of rib, that competition style, I was paying homage while dialing a lot of that back. I finished the rib in foil. I finished it in foil back then. And there's reasons I used to finish it in foil. I won't get into that right now. I don't do that so much anymore. These days, I cook them unwrapped, throw them in the foil at the end with the sauce. And the reason that I do that is because it's easier for me to get more consistency doing it that way than pulling all this foil out and doing all that mid-cook. Especially the way I barbecue, I'm a lone ranger. I don't have a lot of help most times. It's just a lot of work to wrap 30 or 40 plus slabs of ribs at the smoker, pull out all the brown sugar, all the stuff, whatever. It's just way easier. Hit them with the sauce, throw them in the foil. I'm telling you this because the verdict is still out for me. I really enjoy the older way I used to do it, but I also like kind of the newer way I do it from a consistency and efficiency standpoint. So I don't know. I feel like what I want to do is just do a video on my favorite way and just test both of the options and put my nickel down on one. But I like both. No wrap, you get a little bit more color, more bark formation. It's a little bit of a more, it's a different bite. The wrap it version that I used to do, it's a softer bite. And yeah, it's a softer bite. The no wrap is it's a more interesting bite. I don't know how to articulate it. I just like the color that comes off of the no wrap as well. So that's that. And I think the last thing I'll say, guys, is understanding beats copying. And I think that's part of the reason why when you watch my videos, I look at my analytics, my average video over the past 18 months, I think my average video length is like 42 minutes. And that's really long. That's long to be a barbecue YouTube channel. The reason why I was unable to make a video shorter than 20 minutes in the year of 2025 for the most part was because I value understanding so much. If you guys don't listen to anything I say, listen to this. There's one thing to watch me talk about barbecue and go copy what I do. It's another thing to watch me or watch anyone talk about barbecue and fight to understand what I'm talking about. And that's why I said my videos are so long, because I understand how important it is to get the understanding piece. And so I went out of my way to teach parts of the process that I could have cut out, but I didn't, because I understood that this is information you guys need, because at some point, there's going to be a collective of people that will value the understanding portion, and they're going to want to go get it. So I wanted to have it. That certainly didn't help me from an algorithmic perspective, because the algorithm does not value more information. The algorithm values actually less information. So fight to get understanding in this barbecue thing. Don't just copy. And I think when you do that, you'll start to come to some of the conclusions that I've mapped out here, and or you'll start to see how I came to them. And I'll say this, I don't mince words in my videos. Everything that comes off my tongue is calculated, and it's for a reason. Likewise, everything I don't say is for a reason. I get a lot of DMs, I get questions, and I get people that say, Marcus, when did you this, or why did you that, or how did you this from my videos? And most times I don't respond because my response would be the following. I would have to say, brother, if I told you that, I would be robbing you of the opportunity to experience this the hard way. And you have to experience this the hard way if you want to get to the level of barbecue that you desire to get at. By telling you the answer to this specific question, I would rob you of that opportunity because I had to learn that the hard way. This is a shortcut I cannot give you. That's why I left it out. And so I guess my overarching point is on this barbecue journey, specifically this rib journey, test some stuff out, make some mistakes, listen to all that I said, find what resonates with you, find what doesn't resonate with you, and just apply it to what you're already doing. And I think the end product will be inching closer to something that you're really proud of. I'll say this in summary, there's two things. This is such a hard pivot. But don't you click off this video, because this is look, guys, I filmed this video yesterday, this entire podcast yesterday, edited it. Well, I filmed it and realized that the mic was on mute. This mic here was on mute. My fat finger hit the mute button. So I ripped an entire podcast, and just to realize I didn't have the audio. I didn't have my main. I had my scratch audio off the camera, which is crappy. So I edited this whole thing. I rendered it for 3 hours. I uploaded it to YouTube for 3 hours. I did all this, color graded it, all this. Played it for my wife because I was a little self-conscious of the audio because I'm a perfectionist. I had convinced myself that it wasn't that bad, so I was going to post this video yesterday. My wife looked at me and she said, Marcus, it sounds like you're on a speakerphone. And I said, gosh darn it. So I spooled this thing up today. I'm telling you that because I just want to request some grace from you guys. I hit a lot of these topics in detail. Let me put it this way. You're not getting a lesser podcast. I moved through the same topics about the same way, but my head's spinning just a little bit because I'm having this whole time, like I'm staring at a camera, which is a weird thing to do. It's not natural. And I'm having this constant cycle of deja vu because I just did this. I wore the same outfit. I'm in the same setup, saying roughly the same thing. So I'm just a little bit out of it. So bear with me. Give me some grace, guys. I hope this podcast was helpful. And I'll also say this hat, Bad Day to Be a Brisket. This is probably my favorite hat that I have right now. I sell it online. I could go into a whole spiel about merch and products and all that stuff. But in my prior career, growing businesses and helping businesses grow, I learned a lesson the hard way. A lot of my business owners, you guys will know this. Growth for the sake of growth is not helpful. To grow just to grow is not helpful really to most businesses, especially small businesses. You guys don't know how easy it would be for me to go get $10,000 of product, blend 4 more ribs, blend 4 more rubs, get 10 hats, 10 shirts, and go spend $5,000 in ad spend and push all that stuff and make money, a bunch of money on paper. That would break me. To do that right now would crush me. I am trying to be in this thing for the long haul through 2026. And so I am trying to taper the growth. I'm saying that because I'm just trying to sell what I have. I really badly want to make more stuff, new stuff, but I just have to sell what I have. So if any of my videos have ever helped you and you're a hat guy or you're a barbecue rub kind of person, feel free to hit the website, get whatever you feel inclined to get. And if you don't feel inclined to spend money, that's totally fine. Sometimes what helps me more than money itself is to read comments that just say, hey brother, I see you, keep pushing, I appreciate you. Like, guys, you have no idea how much that's helpful. And most times that means more than money does. But I'm full-time YouTube right now trying to make this thing work, so I got to make a dollar somehow. And selling my own products allows me to keep the stupid companies that reach out to me that offer me money to do stuff. I don't know. I don't know if it's right or wrong. I mean, I think it's right. I'm still fighting a lot of those companies off, trying not to introduce that into the channel. But I would be lying. I'd be lying. And right now, guys, I'm off the rib topic. If you're still listening, that's because you're fam, and we're podcasting right now. So I'd be lying, guys, if I said that it doesn't get enticing. Because sometimes I think to myself, like, when you watch a movie and then there's a Coca-Cola can just clearly in the movie, we don't bat our eye at that, but clearly that's paid advertising. But when a brand contacts me and is like, "Hey, can you put our this in your video?" I'm like, "Well, no, because I'm trying to keep my channel clean of that stuff." And the way that I've been able to do that so far by the skin of my is that the saying? Skin of your teeth, skin of my pants? I don't know what the saying is. Skin of your teeth doesn't make sense, but maybe that's why they say it. I have by a hair's margin been able to keep a lot of that stuff off the channel because of your guys' support. I sell Brisket Booster, I sell hats here and there, and that's helped me out. So this is not me asking you to transact if you don't want to. If you don't want to transact, totally fine. I'm just talking to the people who, you like a hat, you like a barbecue rub. Cool. The last thing I say, as always, guys, I love you to death. I appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed this. I spooled this podcast up because I promise you guys I'm going to come to you with a podcast every week. And I am in the process of filming a video that's going to go up this week as well. I'm editing another video. There's just a lot happening. I didn't have a topic set, and I was like, out of all the barbecue minutia that's in my head, what could I just show up and riff about? I was like, ribs. Let's talk about ribs. So hope you enjoyed. Give me some grace, guys. Sorry if this one felt a little disconjointed. I think disconjointed. I don't know, guys. My head's spinning. I love you. Appreciate you guys. Big Frizz. Meet and greet. As always. Over and out.